Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Ron if you're new here. This video is about the DJI Mavic Air and the most recent firmware update for both the aircraft and the remote controller. So let's jump right into it. This release is dated September 30th, 2018. Before we get into the specifics of what's in this most recent firmware update, just let me say that I am not recommending this firmware update for the Mavic Air. Correct. I'm not recommending it. You guys might not agree with me, but I'll get to the reasons why in just a moment. But for now, let's just go through what's included in the release notes from DJI for this most recent update. The firmware release notes are also posted on the DJI forum, and I'll post a link to that below so you can check that out if you want. So this is the aircraft firmware ending in .0500 and the remote controller firmware ending in .0200, which works in conjunction with the DJI Go 4 app for both iOS and Android phones version 4.3.0. Just want to clarify that they're all compatible together. So what's new? For the aircraft itself, we have the following. And these are all what DJI lists as far as the updates itself. And granted, a lot of times their updates are vague at best and not always very specific. So sometimes you have to read between the lines a little bit. But if you're familiar with some of the previous issues, you can usually identify what they fixed or what they didn't fix. So the first issue fixed is the issue where the aircraft behaved abnormally when it misidentified a subject in active track. If you were running active track and you had this issue, I'm sure you're well aware of the behavior. Active track wasn't working properly and the drone would fly into the object it was supposed to basically be observing. Clearly a safety issue. Second issue, fix the issue during return to home where the aircraft continued to fly backward when it sensed obstacles both in front and behind. That's another good fix. Fix the issue where the time displayed on the photos was incorrect. That's a minor issue, not a big deal. Fix an issue where the aircraft flight distance was still restricted despite the distance limit being disabled in the DJI Go 4 app. Major issue. Fix the issue where the abnormal current warning appeared too frequently in some situations. Now this is a little vague, but I believe DJI is referring to the Air I had identified in my previous video. I'll put a link here if you want to see what that previous video was about. But in short, a lot of folks were seeing an error. Motor current error check, your propellers fly with caution. This is a good fix as well. Fix the issue where the aircraft could not land due to issues with the remote controller control sticks, another significant fix. Then you have the remote controller firmware updates as well. They added the ability to adjust the camera parameters, basically press and hold the customizable button and toggle the gimbal dial to adjust. This one requires aircraft firmware version ending in .0500 or later. That's it. So those are the most recent updates since the previous update we had about 5 months ago. Now back to why I'm not recommending this update. I've read through the remarks in the forums from those who have made this update, and many are still having an issue. Not the same issues, but new issues. To summarize, I've seen the following. Random gimbal movements when flying, similar to what you might get if you fly in high winds and a gimbal shifts left, right, up, or down. Reports of having to recalibrate the controller. Some reporting video feedback on their phones being patchy or choppy at distances over 600 meters, sometimes less. Uncontrolled yaw movements at times. IMU errors making the aircraft unflyable in certain situations. These are just some of the comments I've seen in the forum. Now some are reporting no issues at all. Let me be clear, some are reporting no issues at all. However, I'm not 100% confident in this firmware update, and in turn, I cannot recommend it. I believe many will experience different issues depending on the phones they're using in conjunction with the remote controller. You'll also see differences in distances and video lag or latency depending on what country you live in. Regulations are different country to country, so something to be aware of. For me personally, I have not updated my Mavic Air firmware in months. I'm probably 2 or 3 revisions behind what's currently available from DJI, but that's me. My best recommendations for everyone is this. If you were having problems with your Mavic Air previously, which prevents you from flying, then you have nothing to lose by updating the firmware for both the aircraft and the controller. However, if your Mavic Air is not having an issue, or if the issues are only cosmetic in nature that don't impact your flight, then I would say don't make this update. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If it's not broken, don't fix it. I've been flying for months on an older version of the software. If I'm not mistaken, it's 0300, so 2 revisions behind. Oh, and remember, just because you get the firmware update notice in the DJI Go 4 app does not mean you have to make these updates. Simply click ignore, and you can still fly as you normally do. The app doesn't force you to install them. I mention this because many of us are outdoors when we get this notification and often feel like we have to make the update. Don't do it. Just sit tight. Anytime you see a new update, go into the DJI forums and read what users are reporting. Then decide if you need to make the update or not. You'll also find 2 video tutorials at the bottom of the DJI announcement for this firmware update. If you're not sure how to install it, you can choose to make the update through the DJI Go 4 app or the DJI Assist 2. Again, the link will be posted below if you need it. So one other thing worth mentioning is you can launch the DJI Assistant 2 application. This is where you can do your firmware updates. You can use this or you can use the DJI Go 4 app. If you go in here, you can also downgrade software versions. Now, I say that with limitations because you could downgrade up to the 0300 to the previous version. From what I understand, you could not downgrade once we hit the 0400 firmware update. I didn't make that update, so that's what I'm seeing in the forums. And I'd be curious to find out if you can downgrade from the 05 firmware update. So if any of you make the update and have to roll back, leave me a comment below. I'm curious, and I'm sure others would find it helpful, if you can roll back from the 0500 back to a previous version. You could do that again from the DJI Assistant 2 app. So you just connect up your Mavic Air to your PC via the cable that's provided, log into the app, and you're going to see the current version you're on, as well as newer versions available to you. I hope you found this information helpful, and although I've recently been testing the Mavic 2 Pro, I'll put a recent video here, I'm still flying the Mavic Air, the Spark. I'll have more videos on those in the future. Please be sure to give this a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram, and I do thank you if you're an active subscriber. If you're not an active subscriber, I hope you'll think about subscribing. Be sure to click that bell so you're notified of future videos, and until next time, happy flying.
Always alone. You will always be there. Always alone.